Welcome to Paperback Perspectives, a podcast about books, where your hosts, Ryne, Kaylin, and Annette, give you their perspectives on all things reading. Cozy up in your favorite book nook and let's dive in.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Paperback Perspectives, episode...
Chapter
11.
Chapter 11! Woohoo! I wasn't sure, so thank you for filling in. We have a very
We kind of made a big
episode.
deal last time about it being chapter time.
We sure did, didn't we? We're off to a great start.
It's all right.
We have a very special episode because we have a very special guest. My mother-in-law, Michele, is here to talk about her love of books.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
We're excited that you could finally be here.
Woohoo!
So before we get into books, which I understand Kaylin has a lot of books
I'm
this
very
time.
excited to talk books.
It's been over a month since we recorded. So what happened in life? Kaylin, go.
Okay, I know some of it is you're going to talk about because we did it together.
Yes.
We actually communicate outside of this podcast, if you guys can believe that.
I can't.
We went to the cities and we did lots of fun things. We'll dive more into like recommendations because I'm pretty sure you're recommending something from there.
Am I?
Recommendationing.
Yes. I am recommendationing it.
But anyways, we went to a Timberwolves game. They won. It was a super fun game. It was very like lively and exciting. That was really fun. And then Activate, which Ryne will dive into, and then we had really yummy breakfast, which I'll talk about later. I've been into sourdough, been sourdoughing. And today I just made a whole wheat. I haven't cut into it yet, so
it looks
I don't
like
know.
the pictures in magazines.
I don't know.
Smells good too.
And then I made a white chocolate almond one the other day, and that one was really good. It was
Are these
my
from your
first.
cookbook you got for Christmas?
I can't remember which one I made from the cookbook and which one I made from online, but
Okay.
I've done a couple from there, yeah. And then also some cinnamon rolls with discard, and Sam said, quote, "These are the best cinnamon rolls I've ever had."
Even better than Pillsbury out of a can.
Unbelievable, but yes.
That's crazy.
Huh. I do like those little pop cans.
I do
though.
too,
That's
yeah.
pretty good.
And lastly, this is the most important thing. I went and watched Paddington in Peru. Yay!
And?
Paddington.
It was fantastic and cute and adorable, and I love him. We should have brought him down. I have a little stuffed Paddington.
You have Paddington?
I have a stuffed Paddington.
Oh, I thought you
So
were
do
real
you-
Paddington.
Do you think that Paddington, when you saw him, was just like your mind when you were reading his books?
I actually never really read his books before the movies.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't really, but
We were deprived in our childhood.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
It's okay.
Come on. But yeah, that's my update. I don't have anything else really.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mine's kind of the same thing. Minneapolis trip. I'll talk about Activate later. It's been a good sports chunk of time. Baseball's back. That's all that
really?
matters.
I hadn't heard.
Nope.
I haven't gotten any exclamatory texts.
Nope.
about
I haven't sent
baseball
paragraphs
returning.
in full capitalization at all. Well, I've been very chill, very calm about it.
As you always are when baseball season returns.
It's the best time of the year. And then USA Canada happened. Golf has been happening, and it's just been awesome. And I love it. And that's about it.
Nice.
Can we just skip me? Because I haven't really done much.
No.
It's February and there's not much going on. And we live in a place where February is not very exciting. So I don't know.
We're above zero today.
That is
Woo!
a victory. Yes.
We're about freezing today.
Yeah. I have just been doing the normal stuff. So I don't have any big dramatic things to share.
That's okay.
I am in the boring corner over here.
It's just a corner of one.
Wait. I
Yeah.
was like, wait, are you roping Michele into the
I was like,
No, I don't think. I'm guessing
I'm
yours
going to
is-
be as exciting, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know. We've been working on trying to eat healthy and do some wellness things, and parent-teacher conferences are done. Check that
Woo!
box for
Yeah.
the year. So victory there, and
baseball's back.
baseball's back. And we actually have a fantasy golf league going that is going fantastically well. So if anybody wants in, we could probably get you in. It's not going well for me, but it's going
Nor
well
I.
as a group. We're having fun with it. So, but this week we all made the cut with our choices.
Yeah.
I haven't checked my guy. I don't know who
Right.
I picked.
You haven't been watching? It's so much
Baseball's
fun.
back. I have
You
more
didn't
important
watch
things.
baseball together or today either.
I was out of the movies.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
So anyway, that's what's going on. Michele, what have you been up to?
Well, just so people that don't know me, I have a massage business, and so I've done that for over 30 years, and so I still do that part-time. And then I work for the county. I'm a transportation aide or a human service aide, so that's the other part of my life. And other than that, we're just working on cleaning out my mother's house and trying to get it ready for new owners.
It's a process.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Slow but steady.
I was telling your son yesterday, I was just like, we take care of one thing and then 2 more things pop up, and then we take care of those 2 things and then 4 more things pop up, and it's just
Can I break this to you gently? That's how owning a home is, and it's that way forever.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, we got the new setting on. Gosh, these windows should really be replaced.
Yep.
Oh, this is fixed now. Wait, now we have to do that.
Yep.
We just want to get it to the point where they can move into it. That's a big
step.
We're
Big
getting
step.
it.
Yeah.
Sam, did you have something that you wanted to add in?
Do you want to shout out your massage business at all? Or
Not really.
I
don't.
I just wanted to, in case you wanted to.
Thank you. No, it's okay because I don't need.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
going
I
to take
wasn't
new
sure if you
clients,
were
but
gonna-
thank
Your
you.
schedule's pretty packed as is, I think.
It's okay. Thank you.
That's what happens when you're really good at what you do.
Yeah.
Well, part of it is limited time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed it. It's been very rewarding and a lot of yin and yang because a lot of times things at the county get really heavy with foster kids and the things you hear and deal with, and I'm not a social worker, so I don't deal with what they deal with every day, but just knowing what's happening and then being able to go and do massages on people so you're getting that negative positive. And
Yeah.
although I do have to say all the kids that are in foster care, they're sleeping somewhere safe tonight.
yeah.
The supervisor told me that once, and
That's awesome.
you know, you hang on to those things.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
That's a
For
good way
those
to
hard
put
days.
it.
Good
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
That
That's a
really
really
is.
good way to do it. Yeah.
I like that.
Well, should we get into the books that we've read? Kaylin, do you want to start your monologue?
Is it okay if I start?
Go for
It's
it.
going to be long.
This is a podcast about reading, so you
Okay.
should probably talk about reading.
So the first one I can gloss over, Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. I finished that one. We talked about that last time, and it was a part of the Hot and Hammered series. We'll move past that one.
Was it good?
It was fine. I had
Okay.
7
If
points.
you haven't listened to chapter 10 when everything went off the rails, that was part of it.
3.75 stars, which for me is a little bit low. I'm a generous grader, so it's fine. Moving on from that one, I did a reread, which I rarely do. I did Never Lie by Frida McFadden.
Ooh.
Because whenever we were talking about it, and you had given it as like one of your top books of 2024,
Yep.
and I was like, I think I remember what happened, but there's some parts that I don't remember. I did end up, my memory was jogged like 25% through as soon as I got some bits of pieces of information, but still super good reread.
The way the twists and turns are done, I feel like lends well to a reread.
Yeah, it was fun, even though, and I don't reread very often, so it was kind of fun to go back and like pay attention and like kind of know what happens and see how she sprinkles in like little tidbits throughout,
Yeah.
like leading to the plot twist. Where then, since I kind of knew what happened, it was like, oh, of course, like it's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun too.
I mean, it worked out
reread.
because I had it on hold to listen to on Libby, and then when it came in, I had just started another book, and
Yes.
Kaylin spoke up and said,
Oh,
"No,
nice.
don't cancel it. I'll read it again."
Snagged it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm back
so-
on hold for it again, by the way.
Nice. Good. I'm interested to see how you like it with, based off, that's not your favorite genre, but just like, you're more mystery, historical fiction kind of a thing, but
I would say it's a mystery.
yeah.
So, Annette, for people that don't understand how Libby works, how is that?
So Libby is a service through the public library. So my subscription is through the Grand Forks Public Library, and I was also able to add on through the North Dakota State Library so that it expands how many books you can get. And you do it it's an app on your phone or probably laptop. I have mine through my phone, and you register it through your library card, and then you're able to access audiobooks or reading books if you want to read them on your phone. You can also share them to your Kindle, which is a little bit of a process, but
I maybe mooch off of her Libby.
and so Kaylin also logs into my account, although I
Well,
guess yours would be for a different library.
East
We
Grand
live in
Forks-
different.
I live in East Grand Forks, which is Minnesota. And so our library, Sam has looked at it. It's not quite as extensive as having the North Dakota State Library one. So I just use yours because it's more of a selection.
And I'm never reading the max amount that you can have on there at a time because,
you can have like 8 holds and 6 books at a time, which, whew, if you're juggling 6 books.
Yeah. In just that format, like that's not my favorite format for reading a book. I usually do audio that way.
And in order to, you have only so much time with each.
Yes, that is the challenge of it.
Yes.
So it's 2 weeks, and then sometimes you can extend for another 2 weeks if there's not people in line waiting for it, or if there's a short line. I haven't quite figured it out because sometimes it'll say 5 people are waiting.
Yeah.
Would you like to extend? And you say yes, and they say no. Other people are waiting for this book. And so I'm like, why'd you ask? I'm sorry. And then sometimes you ask and they say, sure, have it for 2 more weeks. So I'm not sure how the system works that way, but that is the drawback because I just had one that I'm going to talk about today that I was like 80% done with and it had to go back. And then I had to be on a hold for like 3 weeks.
Oh no.
And when it came back.
So yeah, the holds are, so the library only has so many copies. And so it's just like a regular library, even though sometimes I think it gets confusing with audiobooks. It's the same as if it was a physical book. Like the library has 2 copies, so they can only deal out the 2 copies and then you wait in line. So that's why sometimes
the
you
licensing,
have to,
copyright.
Yeah. And that's why you have to like be on hold. And so like more popular books, you're going to have to wait longer for usually.
If anyone wants more information, I could email Paperback Perspectives and I can send you the information from the public library.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. It's a great service.
It's fantastic. I use it all the time. I love the library. We've talked about library before.
Mm-hmm. The next book I read is actually on Libby too. This was one I didn't have a book picked. I finished Never Lie and was like ready to, I listen to audiobooks every time I drive to and from work. And so I had finished the book and was like, oh no, I don't have a book to listen to. What else am I going to do? Because I guess I didn't think about music or podcasts, but I was like, I need to find a book. And so I just looked on Libby. You can filter it by available now too. So I just looked up, I wanted to read a thriller. And so I looked up thrillers available now and just found this random one that was rated fine. It was called Don't Believe Her by Nicola Sanders. And it was just a thriller that makes you really question everything, which is kind of the point of thrillers, is to kind of make you like question all this, like every situation, all the people. It had really good twists and turns. It was kind of Frida McFadden-esque if you've ever read a Frida McFadden. But it really made you question like your sanity along with the main character's sanity. Like it's told from the main character's perspective, and so you're kind of, they're questioning things and doubting themselves, and you're questioning it like right along with them. So it was a good read for one that I didn't know anything about and just picked up. Yeah. Then the next one I'm really excited to talk about, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis, which I believe is categorized as historical fiction.
I think it is too.
Woo! My goal. My goal was to read more historical fiction. Fantastic book. I think it's just like very feel good, but also very not feel good. Like it's very real based off of the time and how women are treated. The main character is like the coolest lady, but we were talking before and when we were out for coffee, Mom and I, and we were saying we love that she's not lovable. Like she is, but it very much highlights her faults, her quirks, and her
you like her, but at times you're like, what? No,
get it together. No. yeah, and it's just such a really good full story. Did
you get angry while you were listening to it
So
about the way
angry.
women were treated? And she's a brilliant scientist, the main character, and she gets absolutely no credit for the things she does, absolutely no opportunity, and
Yes, and it's just like so infuriating, and I think that was the point of the whole book. If you get a chance, the book that I read, I can't remember what I read it on, but it had a little interview with the author at the end, and it was really insightful to like hear about the author's research that she had to do about the time. She said she knew nothing about chemistry before this book, and if you've read this book, there's a lot of chemistry in it, and like a lot of talk of chemistry,
but you don't have to understand chemistry to understand the book.
But like she obviously did her research, and because she talks about chemistry because she's a chemist. So that was kind of fun. And her research just of the time and how everybody was treated at that time, especially for females.
So was this loosely based on someone she
No, this was
just
completely fiction.
Okay.
But she did say she wrote it in with her like great grandma in mind, or her grandmother in mind, because that would have been during her grandma's time. And so she like kind of took some stories from her mom and her grandma and like pulled pieces from that. My favorite part actually was getting the perspective of the dog. Which is really you get it for the dog's name is 630, and it's so cute. The way she writes the dog's perspective is really fun, and the dog is also super smart, like genius little dog. And she teaches one of her goals is to teach the dog words, and by the end, I think the dog knows 950 words or something like that. It's just a fun. I just loved the book. It was a 5-star read for sure.
And it's also an easy read.
Yeah.
Like you don't get mired down in it.
No. I haven't watched the series. I know there's a TV series, I think, on Netflix, but I haven't watched that. Did you?
I read the descriptions and it didn't match. The episode descriptions didn't match what I felt like the book was, so I was like, nah.
Yeah. I don't know. So that was that one. 5-star read. I loved it. I would recommend it to like anyone, actually. It's just a great story. Then I read Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. It was the same thing. I just looked up like thriller. That's available now.
Is she the one who wrote Gone Girl?
Gone Girl, yes. Okay. Which I have not read Gone Girl. Have any of you guys read Gone Girl?
I didn't care for it.
Okay. I actually remembered that you hadn't. So when I went into it, I was like, interesting. We'll see how I like it. It's very twisted. It's a person who moves back to her hometown. That's a small town. I can't remember exactly where it is, but she's a reporter and she's reporting on 2 deaths of kids there. So it's very dark. It's twisty. Don't read it if you don't like dark, twisty things. But the twists are very good. And the end made me go, oh. So yeah, it did. I think it did its job. In that regard. And then lastly, I have The Teacher by Frida McFadden, which you would hate.
Uh-oh.
Pointing at mom.
Yes. So it does have to do, it's not really much of a spoiler, but it does have to do with a teacher-student relationship. And the whole time I was reading it, there were several times, if you can't see my face, I'm going to make a face right now. There were several times that I was like,
the sound to accompany that face would be...
Yeah, I was like driving and there were several times that I was like, oh God, mom would hate this. But I believe the point of the book was to make me uncomfortable and to make me kind of feel that like yucky, skin crawly, like, oh, this is inappropriate. Nothing is good. And so I believe like it took me a while after to rate it because I had such strong feelings about being uncomfortable. But when I sat with it and was like, yes, I think she was meaning for me to feel this. So I thought it was really, really good. Does that make sense?
That's a good way to describe rating a book.
Yeah. So I don't remember. I think I gave it a 4.25. Yeah, but I thought it was good, but be prepared to feel uncomfortable, as I think you should feel uncomfortable if you read it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I also have a lot of teachers in my life, so knowing, like, thinking about you guys as teachers was, like, I just know they're so uncomfortable with this right now, and, like, I know how, like, you guys take your job so seriously, and professionalism is so important, and, like, so, yeah, it made me feel uncomfortable. Those are my books.
Nice.
I won't do my currently reading. I'll circle back.
We'll circle
because I've talked too much.
Okay. Sounds good. Should I go next?
Sure.
Okay. I've only read 2 as opposed to Kaylin's 6.
Quit putting only at the front.
It's not a contest.
No.
Anyway, I read 2 very different books in the last month. The first one was Nuclear War, A Scenario by Annie Jacobson. It's like a somewhat realistic view as to like what would happen if there was a nuclear war around the world. And it goes through like the timeline. I think I got it a little bit wrong last time I was describing it. It's the first 20 minutes then it's the next 24 minutes, and then it's the final 24 minutes is like the way that it is set up.
So it spans just like an hour? The whole book?
Yeah, pretty much. And
My, oh
it's
my.
280 pages or so, 300 about.
So is it fiction or is it like
It's
research based? Like
research-based fiction. So like if a nuclear war were to break out, this is one of the most likely scenarios as to like what would happen.
This book sounds like it would make me anxious.
I think that too.
I had that thought, and then I realized there's really nothing I can do about it. So why do I even have to worry about it?
Fair enough.
also, I think I just don't want to know what's going to happen.
It's actually really interesting because like you want to
Get in
be
the fridge.
prepared. No, you want to get underground as fast as you can. It's really interesting to learn about
if I'm
like
in a fridge
the
underground?
systems. There you go. Fridge underground is the way to go. But just like the systems that are in place, and it's like that stuff, like the systems are like out there, they're researched, they're verifiable, and so it's really interesting to hear like what the world has in place, the U.S. versus other countries, like how far ahead the U.S. is compared to countries like Russia, North Korea, other things like that for like early warning systems, that type of stuff. Really interesting. And nuclear war is scary, but I can't do anything about it. And that's the
Fair
book.
enough. I like that perspective.
Plus, being so close to the base too.
True.
We're probably remember the movie War Games.
Yeah, I think they do mention North Dakota in here every now and then. I was reading this on a work trip with Sam, and I was like, North Dakota was mentioned. And he's like, isn't that about nuclear war? And I'm like,
Yeah.
Do you remember as kids? Because that would be the conversation was that North Dakota was probably one of the first targets with the missile
No.
bases and the bases.
Yep.
that were
North
here.
Dakota
We live here to be
was-
forgotten.
North Dakota was not a first target. We were like fifth. So there's that. And then it didn't mention Grand Forks, it mentioned Minot. So, sorry.
Shirley?
Sorry, Shirley.
The B-52s.
Oh, no.
Yep. So that's fun. And then the second book that I read is, as you can tell, The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. It is everything that Kaylin giggles about and then some. It is just the most adorable, cutest little book in the world. So many times, again, I was reading this on our Minneapolis trip, and I would just kind of go, oh.
It's like, what happened?
And I'm like, oh, you got a little hat. And it's so cute, and it's just adorable. I
Also
won't.
has a kind of cool message, or it does
Has a
have a
great-
very
It has
cool
a great
message.
message. Yeah.
It's not just cute; it's cute with a message.
Yeah.
I think the message is what makes it so heartfelt, and you feel it so like deeply because it has such a strong message
Yeah.
carrying out like throughout the book.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that Tom read this book, and on his whatever Storygraph, he only rated it a 3 out of 5, which I think he should be cast out into space.
Everyone gets their opinion. We're allowed.
Everyone gets their opinion.
Remember, I didn't
Unless
like
they're
the
wrong.
book. Remember, I didn't like the book that Tom said was his recommended choice that everyone should read.
Yeah, well, he's an English teacher, so I know he's
That's
going
what I
to
mean.
listen
It's just
to
we have
this,
different
so, like,
perspectives.
he was reading Jane Eyre the other day, and I was like, why waste your time? Anyway. But I can't recommend House in the Cerulean Sea enough. It's so cute and very, very good. So that's my piece on that book. Now everyone on the podcast has read it, except for Sam.
I'm told I have to.
You have to.
I will.
Yeah.
Mother.
All right. Well,
Ooh, I like how that book is worn.
it came from Thrift Books. It came with notes and underlined in it.
Oh.
So, okay, to back up, you might remember when I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern.
I believe that the review was I loved it and I hated it at the same time.
Yeah, I had it gets very conflicting how you feel about these books. I won't say that I hated this one at any point, but I was. The way
you
she
said the
writes
name of
is
it?
fascinating. I have not.
Oh, okay.
Would that be helpful?
I think so.
No. People should Google it and just guess based off of your buzzwords.
Starts with an S.
There we go.
Sounds like.
It is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So The Starless Sea it's a story about stories and the places where stories come from, is how I would describe it. So the main character is the son of a fortune teller, and that's how he's often described in the book. Like he finds notes and pieces addressed to him, just addressed to the son of the fortune teller. And in the beginning, I think I mentioned this last time, he finds this old book in the library that's not actually cataloged in the library. And as he's reading it, he realizes it's a story of his life and things that have happened to him. And there's a door when he was a kid that appeared in his alley where he lived, and he didn't open it. And he's always wondered what would happen, because when he went back the next day, the door was gone. Oh. But now, fast forward, he's a graduate student and he finds another door. And he goes to the place where the stories come from. There's masquerade balls. I wouldn't say there's magic. I would say it's fantasy in a way of they're in this underground world finding the origin of stories and who is the author of the stories that are told and how stories are passed on.
More like an alternate universe type thing.
I would say that. It's very fascinating. One of the reviews that I looked at was they said that Aaron Morgenstern creates a 3D immersive experience. And I would say that is very true, because you're just visualizing this world that he's in. He's in this. So the Starless Sea is basically this harbor where the stories are born and come from and are transported. And some people are trying to shut down the Starless Sea, and some people are trying to save it. And it becomes this quest that he has to find first the Starless Sea and then to figure out what's happening and basically kind of choose a side. And there's characters along the way. And it's very interesting. I would guess there is a ton of symbolism in this book, of which I missed 90% of it, because as we've talked about before, I'm not a reading for symbolism person. I'm a literal reader when I read.
I'm here for entertainment.
So there's probably people listening that are like, oh, but you missed the part where this meant this. And for example, one of the characters, I'm pretty sure, was meant to be fate. Like that character was fate, and another character was meant to be time. And another character
picking up those cues.
Well, they kind of laid those up for us. But and one
one
character was the moon, and I got those. And I bet you there's a million other ones that I didn't get. But very interesting read. I really liked it. And I'm not even sure who I would recommend it to, because it's a really unique book. Okay. Then in a completely different direction, I read a book called Everyone Wants to Kill Milton by James McCrae. And James McCrae is the grandpa of one of our readers. And he's written several books, or one of our listeners, I'm sorry. And they gave us the book to read, and I read it. And it was very interesting. The characters are really interestingly developed. It wasn't a book for my style of reading. It's really kind of I guess you'd call it like a court kind of
courtroom drama.
Yeah. And there's all of the pieces of like how the courtroom works and all the parts and the moving things. And that is not an area of high interest for me, but I still enjoyed reading it for the character piece and to find out what happened.
Dun, dun.
Where does this go?
Isn't that the thing?
Yeah.
A procedural.
Dun, dun, dun,
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So very interesting. And one of my goals was to read things in different genres.
Dun, dun.
So check that. I got a new genre in there.
We're devolving.
Then I did The Monogram Murders by Sophie Hannah. This is the one when we talked about Libby earlier. I was 80% of the way through and then had to return it and wait for it to come back.
Oh,
and
no.
It's a Hercule Poirot book. And that was a good mystery. It was very, very...
So did you finish it?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was very Agatha styled. There was a lot of poisoning and there was a very... but not in a dramatic, grisly way. It's brilliant after the fact, let's figure it out way. So I liked that one. I read Old Cold Grave by Ona Wisha, which is the Lane Winslow series where she's the former spy that's living in Canada after World War I. And they're just a really cute, sweet series. There's a little romance, little romance involved, and
the book cover is amazing too.
Yeah, isn't
I
that
like
a great
that.
cover? I like her covers of her books. I like that. So if anyone likes kind of cozy historical mystery series, I would recommend that series by Iona Wishaw. The first one is called A Killer in King's Cove.
I like the alliteration.
Yeah.
It's very good.
And then I have one more. I'm part of a book study at school. We're reading a book called Powerful Teaching by Pooja Agarwal, which has actually been a really good one because it gives really simple, straightforward strategies. And I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to like how the brain works and how learning works. And it's very I don't know what the word would be, like reaffirming of the way that I think learning happens. And like lots of the things like we did when you guys were growing up, like using alliteration to remember something or making up a silly song, or they focus a lot on ways to recall information more than ways to learn information. Like the fact that you have this powerful engine in your brain that has all these things in it, and so teaching ways to be able to access that.
X
and it has
equals negative b plus or minus the square root.
There you go.
Dad hates that song.
And it doesn't require major things to use in your class. So like lots of really quick, easy strategies with low prep. So for teachers out there, powerful teaching is a good
Nice.
Nice.
That's my wrap.
And now to our esteemed guest, Michelle. What books have you been reading lately?
Well, I tell you, I'm a different kind of reader than these guys are. So the general...
all types of reading and readers are accepted.
And that's why
Yeah.
it's fun to have you as a guest, because everybody does read differently, and that it's fun to hear people's perspectives.
Good one. The majority of my reading is done in the summertime at the lake. That's when I feel like I have the majority of the time to do that. So I kind of took a little different angle when I was coming here, and I was thinking more about talking about my process of reading in my life, and
I like it.
how
Yeah,
it
that sounds
started
awesome.
and how it evolved. And I would say, reflecting back, I didn't realize how important reading was in my life until the flood of 97, because I lost my library. And although we didn't lose our main home, we lost everything in our basement, and that's where my library was. And I had all my crafts and everything down there, all the things that were my things that I did to pass time and fulfill the creative part of my soul. And I realized the thing that I missed the most was my books. So that really put it into perspective for me. Now more than ever, my husband would say, I've more than made up for that. And we need a house just for just for my library.
There are never too many books.
You don't have enough books.
He'd say, I don't read enough for the amount of books that I have.
Pshaw.
You don't have enough bookshelves.
There you
Yeah,
go.
that's
That's
the
my
problem.
theory.
Exactly.
But
For context, her husband's sitting right over there in the hallway,
right
and I
behind
am
her.
watching his expressions right now. And Rod, she does not have enough books, so
you haven't seen my house, but that's okay.
I have, and you don't have enough books.
not enough.
I was in the process of going through my mother's house. I have to say that was the house that I grew up in, and my mom kept everything. So going through boxes and cleaning out the house was literally like a path down memory lane for me. And I found the very first book that I ever had.
That's
And
fun.
it made me think about how kids start reading today, is that now kids have hardcover books, but when in the 1960s, it was cloth books. So my first book that I found was a cloth book, and it was Baby's First Words.
Oh, cool.
And so it was really fun to see that and find it again and think about how that progressed. And then it also made me reflect on the first library in Grand Forks, the old Grand Forks Public Library, which used to be downtown. And to this day, I can remember what it smelled like walking into that library.
Oh, the
wow.
smell of old
Yeah.
libraries.
Yes, with the big ornate book shelves and the marble staircase. And
I honestly
it's
feel
really
like
something.
libraries as like a kid, no matter what library, it just like it does genuinely feel like a magical place. Like there's shelves everywhere. Like you're small, the shelves are huge.
And
there's
it's like hushed a little bit.
yeah. And then there is like I feel like fun events, and like I always thought it was like magical, and then I bring my books up and then they're like, boop, you can take it home, and I'm like, oh my god.
And then like dropping them off, and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm all done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's exactly how I felt
Yeah.
too.
Just like a magical place.
It was. And then also sitting on my front steps as a kid, because I'm an only child. So I spent a lot of time at the library, and I spent a lot of time on my front steps reading. And the thing that I remember the most is how being in your mind and reading a book can take you to so many places, and without having to leave your home. And that's what I love the most about books, is that
Oh my gosh, I can
escapism.
relate to that so much, because we spent summers where I was the only kid around, and I spent hours and hours and weeks reading, and you go everywhere.
So growing up, you said like reading on your like front steps and stuff. Were you always a reader, like from like time you can remember, like all the way through like high school, college?
I always had a book going. I would say maybe, well, I went to a technical college, so during that time, because it was a lot of anatomy and physiology, I probably didn't read then, unlike Kaylin. But
yeah, I had the opposite effect. Found reading when I was doing that, and then I actually had the lull when I wasn't learning a lot of like anatomy and physiology. So I was opposite, but yeah, I do get it though.
Yeah, for sure.
You're consuming so much other information that you're just like, I have no time for that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just, most of what I gravitated to for reading was fiction, and that's still to this day the majority of what I read is fiction. I like things that are a little more suspenseful. I like some element of real stories about the human condition. And my favorite author is Jodi Picoult, which I've mentioned to Ryne many times.
I've never read a Jodi Picoult. Is she like, can you, like, what genre is she generally?
How would you describe her, Annette, would you say?
I would say realistic fiction. I mean, like, it's stories that could happen. It's lifetime, people's lives. She tells the story of people's lives.
The thing that I think about a lot of times with her books, each chapter you're reading the perspective of that person. Yeah. So one of her most powerful books to me was Small Great Things. And just in a nutshell, and I won't probably do it justice, it's about a nurse who is Black and a white supremacist couple that comes in to have a baby, and it's the dynamics of that experience.
Sure. So
you get to see everyone, how that person is perceiving that situation. And it's very challenging because you have your opinions on certain things, and then you're drawn into this person's mind and how you look at it differently.
That would be very hard to write as an author. So I feel like that's, I mean, I haven't read the book, but it sounds like that would be like very challenging to, like you said, put your own biases aside and write from a different perspective. And you shared
that book with me. That is a very, very,
very powerful.
And then the book that you were reading this last summer at the lake, the book about the young boy who had autism, right? Is that what he had? Yes?
Yes. And this book, and again, Jodi, I seem to always go back to her all the time. I read another author and then I come back to her because
we all have those authors.
Those comfort authors, yeah.
House Rules. When I actually gave this book to my son Matt's on the spectrum and high functioning, and when I read this from the chapter that is the mother, she was like living our life at the beginning of the story. Of course, it evolves. There's a murder and all that, and we've never had that in our life.
Thank goodness.
But even the boy that has autism and how he views the world, and she had to do an incredible amount of research and really get into the mind of these kids, even though each one has a different experience with the world. I've never read anything, and I've read a lot of books with people about autism that, even though this is a fictional book, she did an incredible amount of research, and I don't know how she pulled herself into those characters.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, one of Matt's middle school teachers, I gave him this, and he said it was one of the best reads of his life.
Oh, wow.
So, and it gave
awesome.
him that insight too of the kids that he, works with. And then for Christmas this year, I keep going back to Jodi, but Lauren and Ryne gave me Jodi's current book, which is a little bit of historical fiction, and this is the way that Jodi has gone a little different direction with her. She's got so many books.
That's a fun cover.
It is.
It's a beautiful cover.
By any other name?
Yes, and this is more during the time of Shakespeare, and so it would be. I think it's going to be really interesting because I've wanted to read more historical fiction, and I think that's a good transition for me since I love her as a writer. I did want to back up a little bit and say I know, Kaylin, you love fantasy books.
I do.
And I was thinking about the fantasy that I read, and I really started when I was a little bit younger with The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle. Have you read this?
I have not.
This is more maybe a middle school range.
It's perfect for you. That's recommending possible.
Yeah, I think it's real fun. And then the other one that I read was Beauty, and certainly right now, it's very Wicked being very popular with on theater in the theater right now. Gregory Maguire, who actually wrote the book Wicked, has other books in that he's written that are all fantasy. This one, Mirror Mirror, is actually more in regards to the I think it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Sure.
And then with Lost, this is has to do with
Hansel and Gretel.
yeah.
Oh my god,
with
that
Charles
cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like Ebenezer Scrooge is who he is. So it's kind of fun if you like that direction that Wicked
Interesting.
goes to see this author, and he's had these books have been around for a long time, and he's got a lot of different titles with different characters. I think he's really good too.
Yeah, I like those covers. Those are fun. Very fun.
Nice. So when you were like younger, did you like what type of books did you read, and then like when did you like transition and change into the more like Jodi Picoult historical fiction?
I
like,
don't know how I came across it. I think probably middle school. I read the series Flowers in the Attic. I came across that one, and I don't know if someone had recommended that.
We
by
talked
V.C.
about it on
Andrews.
our Stephen King episode. How
I was thinking that. Kaylin, did you read that?
I don't recall this book.
I think I just brought it up saying that was the every middle school girl, like everybody, we all read that series at that point.
Yes.
And that was about as far as I'd gone into horror kind of before
Like your
they
little
made me
hand motion.
before they made me read Stephen King books.
Yeah, it was more the psychological part of it, not so much. There wasn't any gore in it. It was just it made you squirm in your seat. The circumstance of these kids being in this attic and
Sounds good.
how they were treated. And then that I also flipped into Phyllis Whitney. She was kind of the first author where I really started collecting books, and she had a little bit more romance to hers, but she also had a lot of her settings of her stories were in more exotic locations, and we didn't travel, so it was fun to go to these
Sure.
other places with her. But she was the first author I collected.
We kind of already touched on this, but I wrote down the question, like, what do you get? Not that you have to get anything out of reading, but what do you get out of reading? Or like, what is your, like, why do you read? And is it like because you kind of touched on it, like the escapism piece of it, or is it to feel the emotions or to like dive into other people's problems? Or I'm just curious, like, what way do you get out of reading? Does that make sense?
Going deep today,
think
Kaylin.
so. Oh my
wow.
gosh.
Good question, and I think it's all of it. It depends on what's going on in my life at the time.
Totally get that.
I think a lot of times it's that safe space where if there's a lot of stress going on in life and you want to escape whatever is stressing you out your mind, then you go to your book and it's like, this is comforting. And even if the characters are doing crazy things, it's
Yeah.
still, it's a
Somewhere
redirect.
else. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like their problems, not yours, kind of a thing. So it's nice to
Yeah.
focus on, oh, these people have problems and they're not the ones in my life right now. So let's dive into those.
Exactly. And really a lot of the stories end up happy. So you want the good things to happen to your characters.
Yeah.
And that's reaffirming and that, okay, everything's going to turn out okay.
Yeah. I notoriously hate, I kind of loathe books that end not happy. I cannot read books that don't end happy. Like we talked, I think, about the last episode where you read the Kristen Hanna that ends, you said sad mostly. And as soon as you said that, I'm like, I'm not reading it. Like immediately turned off. Because for me, the books is like, I need that, like you said, happy ending, knowing things are going to turn out.
The nuclear war book ends happy.
I'm sure it
We'll
does.
take your word for it.
Because there's no nuclear war at the end.
Surprise!
We're alive.
We woke up from a dream and nothing bad will ever happen.
Oh my gosh.
So
You
when,
hope so.
yeah, I know Lauren has mentioned this to me a bunch and you have too, but like when Matt and Lauren were young, like what books did you like read to them? Because Lauren ended up not being a reader, but I know like you always read to her and like to Matt too, I'm assuming as well. But like what books did you read to them, read with them, like when they're younger, like to try to get them into reading?
Both, I think. And more than anything, there wasn't any, well, the one particular author that when the kids were really, really little, that I gravitated to a lot, which is a lot of his books are out of print now. Actually, maybe most of them are, was Fred Rogers.
Love Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
And the reason that Mr. Rogers was so perfect,
I did not know his
especially
first name was Fred. Just a fun fact.
His name is Mr.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
especially for Matt, because his life is so literal. All the kids in the stories they're real children going through this. So the book that we read the most, and I don't know if Lauren would be able to say it, but if she'd remember, it's Going to the Potty. She's shaking her head. She remembers it well. They probably, I think both of them had memorized that book, but it's
funny.
just, it was so positive for them to like look at these little kids, and they're trying and they're struggling too. So
Yeah.
many times and with Lauren it wasn't, but you think, oh no, I don't want to do this, or I don't know how to do this, or I don't, that
Yeah.
struggle as
It's the
they're little.
relatable part of it.
Thinking back to our episode with Jen, she talked about her kiddos, and
Yeah.
she said that like her kiddos actually gravitated a lot towards books with actual kids and
Not
experience.
cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that like we've had two kind of people experience that actual kids and experiences are more relating than animated characters.
And surprisingly, they're very hard to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you are looking for kids' books, they're hard to find books with real people in them.
All right, which one of us is going to now branch out into making children's
That's
books
right.
with real
It's
children in
needed
them?
for
Twist
sure.
my arm.
But Mr. Rogers, I remember when they talked I think it might have been in his movie too about his life, how he talked about hard topics like divorce, adoption, things about real life that kids were experiencing. And so if you're looking for something for kids, that's a good way to go, I think,
yeah.
with his
Yeah.
books. But most of them are out of print. You have to look at thrift books and stuff like that. And then I also loved Eve Bunting. Her stories always have a really kind of good message. The favorite book that I read to the kids a lot, especially when they had to get rid of things, was Little Bear's Little Boat. And the premise of that book is Little Bear has a boat and he grows out of it, and his mother tells him that he needs to pass his little boat on to another little bear because he's too big for it now.
Oh, that's so cute.
That little boat has to have a purpose, just like his little bear's purpose is to grow up. So it's a nice story, and
That sounds adorable.
Spoiler alert, he ends up passing the boat on to a little bear.
No
and this
way.
is a sequel. This is a sequel to that called Big Bear's Big Boat.
Boat.
Yay!
So there was another one there, but
Cute.
she does amazing things with
That
stories.
sounds really cute.
I love Eve Bunting. And then last but not least, I think most people know this story, Love You Forever.
This
Robert
book.
Munch. Robert Munch is
Just if you're listening, Ryne is having a very strange reaction to this book.
Because Lauren always had this book around, just like in our living room for whatever reason. And we don't have kids.
It was for my
was-
children's books class.
Oh, it was for when you were in college.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was so confused. I was
For
like,
people that
why
couldn't
is this
hear, Lauren
here?
shared that it's from when she was taking the children's literature class in college.
but
Ryan,
I was like, why is there a book about
reacted
poop
weird.
in my
Okay.
living room right now?
Let her finish.
this book, Love You Forever, though, I'm just going to read the back of it because this says it so well. A young woman holds her newborn son and looks at him lovingly, and she sings to him, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. This story is how this little boy, through the stages of childhood, becomes a man, and it's also about the enduring nature of a parent's love and how it crosses generations, because it's such a heartwarming book, especially for adults, to give to adults and how much they appreciate their parent. It's not just for children. But Robert Munch has a huge selection of books, and he has a lot of funny books. He has an amazing artist that works with him, the illustrator Michael Marchenko, who does just really, really fun characters. And when I was reading about Robert Munch's bio, he said that at some point in his writing career, he would meet a child and then he would write a book about them. So if you happen to look at the at the beginning of a lot of his books, you see the first name of the child that he's dedicating the book to is the name of the child in the book.
Oh, that's cute.
So it may not have been that circumstance with that child, but he just created a story about a child that he actually met.
Cool.
That's cute.
Yep, I think he's really, and the pictures are just so good. And there's messages in there too, because one of the ones we read a lot was We Share Everything. And Matt hated that book because he didn't like to share. Right, Lauren? I even brought it up the other day, and Matt's like, I hated that book. We read it
funny.
all the time.
That's funny.
And then when we go to church, I would usually bring books that were religious-based so that they were, learning about loving people and having God in their lives and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you said you work at the county and you drive like foster kids around all the time. And I know this summer there was a garage sale and you picked up some books for a kiddo because he really liked a certain book, or I don't remember what the character was. Is that something that you do like specially for kids, or is that like a county thing? Like your other coworkers do that as well?
Well, that's kind of a twofold thing because I usually try when I'm driving kids. It's a lot of time the same kids from week to week because we're bringing them to supervised visits or they're going to therapy. So we build relationships with these kids. So you really find out a lot about them. And I usually try and ask them if they're readers. And if they are, then I usually try to find certain authors or certain, that particular child, he liked they just had a movie.
Is it the Diary of the Wimpy Kid ones?
That was a different child, but
Was it Captain Underpants?
the dog.
Dog Man.
Dog Man. Thank
Yeah.
you. The Dog Man book. So yeah, he really was thrilled because he reads them over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Does the county take donations for books for anything like that?
Well, actually, the other side of books at the county, we have in the entryway of the county building in Grand Forks, there's a free bookshelf. And what I do is there's a wonderful book lady that all she does is takes care of the books over at St. Joe's thrift store in Grand Forks. Connie, she's amazing. And she not only keeps the library at the thrift store immaculate and moves books through beautifully and organizes them and makes suggestions, but if you guys are familiar with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, which is free books that Dolly sends out to families from kids from the ages of 0 to age 5, you can get on that list and get free books delivered. They're brand new books.
That's so
They
cool.
can be older books that are reprinted, like Ferdinand, for instance, is still coming through, and that book was written in the 50s or 60s. And so kids get books in the mail, but what the thrift stores can't do is Dolly doesn't want them to be resold because she wants those books to be in the hands of kids who either can't afford them or just have to have more experience for reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what Connie does is she puts books aside for me and I pick them up and then I restock the free bookshelf
that's
at the
awesome.
county. So
That is really awesome.
and some thrift stores, they do have sections in their stores that have the Dolly Parton books, and if you look on the back, they're free. They don't
Oh,
charge
wow.
for them.
Cool.
So,
good
and
to
that's how
know.
they're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Not all of them do, but they do. And St. Joe's is great for that too.
Awesome.
And I do want to put a plug out for St. Joe's too, because if you're looking for inexpensive books, gently used, most of them are. People read them and then they donate them. They're really, really good. Along with Silver Dawn Books in Grand Forks, local.
Yeah, we need to keep the local ones alive.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And they're doing a fundraiser right now, so if you can help Silver Dawn, go buy some books.
You hear that, Rod, over there? We need to buy some more books.
Support local business, Rod.
More books.
And then I know we're approaching the hour mark here, so we will ask our final interview question that we ask every single guest that comes in. If you had to recommend one book to absolutely anybody, what would it be?
Okay, so for me personally, I would definitely have to say House Rules by Jodi Picoult. That would be my number one book, just because it really draws you into the characters and a different kind of life that you maybe wouldn't perceive have you not had someone in your life with autism. But the current book that I'm reading, which I didn't say earlier,
Oh, yes, we totally
is
forgot about that.
The
Oh, yeah, we
Mighty
didn't do currently reading.
The Mighty Red by Louise Eldridge. She is a local author. The Mighty Red is all about life in the Red River Valley, and
Oh, wow.
she is a really, really beautiful writer because she takes so much of her stories from a spiritual perspective. And do you mind if I read
No,
this quick
go for
paragraph?
it.
For it.
Please do.
This is the inside of her cover. It says, "The Red River of the North is young. From the sky, it looks like a length of string arranged on a flat board in a tight scrawl of twisting loops. The river gathers in the Otter Tail and Boise Sioux rivers and runs north on a slight incline from Wahpeton to Winnipeg. The river is muddy, opaque in sediment, and toxic from field runoff. Not a river you'd swim, but good for fish, at least at its source. The river is changeable, a slow and sleepy trickle in summer, rampaging like a violent toddler in the spring. When it sweeps across the land, reflecting the sky like its mother, a vast prehistoric lake. Over millennia, the waters have given the Red River Valley earth its blackness, its life. The river is shallow, it is deep. I grew up there. It is everything."
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Holy buckets.
I just get goosebumps
Yeah.
knowing
Yeah.
how much the river has affected our lives too.
Yeah. I feel like that would be a good. I feel like Shirley might like that one.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, we're going to have to cut this into 2 parts to continue our next part. Because we're going to play a game with Michelle, because I know how much you like games. We're going to judge a book by its cover.
I didn't
know.
know. I didn't know that was
Yes,
coming. That's
I
my
know.
favorite.
It was a secret because I forgot
Someone
to put it on
didn't
the
read
outline.
our notes. Okay, good. Because I thought I just didn't read the outline. Sometimes I'm not as prepared as I should be.
So we, I think, should we do the outro here, and then we can do part 2 with our current reads, the judge a book by its cover, and then the recommendations.
Fantastic.
Sounds good.
All right, outro lady.
All right, that's me. As always, thank you to the important people. Number 1, thank you to our fantastic guest, Michelle. We'll be back for part 2 shortly. Yay.
In about 1 minute.
Our assistant in our time, our assistant to everything, Lauren, who we just give new tasks to every time we think of something. Fantastic. The person we would not be here without, which is Sam, because he runs this whole show and keeps us going.
Yeah.
And especially a huge thank you to the people who have listened and watched. So
And our live audience, Rod.
Hell yeah. Woohoo.
until the next chapter, this is Paperback Perspectives.
Until the next chapter.
Until the next chapter.
Ciao.
I have to
Perfect.
pee.
You go pee.
He hasn't stopped it yet.
That would be a good way to end.
funny.
I have to pee.